Welcome into Wager Talk TV, a special edition of Trends and Angles, joined alongside Ralph Michaels and son Jeff Michaels. I'm Megan Payton. Happy NBA play-in tournament day, NBA playoffs on the horizon, and Ralph Michaels, Jeff Michaels, here to break it down, giving you guys a very special edition of Trends and Angles. If you've seen Bet On It and you see the TNA segment of that show, this is very similar, but it's all for the NBA playoffs. We will get into all the charts, PDFs, data that these two have. But how are you doing, Ralph? I've got my pin supporting Stat Master, Ralph Michaels. How are you today?
Thanks, Megan. You know, the TNA segments on Bet On It have been incredibly popular. We did a March Madness TNA show. It got great reviews. And my son has become a mini master at the database. Very proud of him. Together, we're going to give you some situations here, but I do want to mention this. If you go to his page at Sports Memo or my page at Wager Talk later tonight after 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday, I have a guide that I'm finishing up. It's about 6 pages long. It's going to give you charts on how the NBA teams did at home, as a home favorite, as a road favorite, versus teams with 50% win percentages, 60% win percentages. And while we're going to give you a glimpse of some of the data here, there's much more in the guide, so make sure you check it out Monday night or anytime on Tuesday.
Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. The chart will be up. Jeff Michaels, how are you doing this afternoon? Excited to have you here to break down some NBA playoff trends.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the postseason here. We're going to kick it off right, kick it off with some looks that we're looking forward to in round one. And hey, a lot of them actually continue on to the later rounds. So like my dad said, plenty of information to be had, and it's not just going to be round one or play in specific. This stuff will last you all the way through the championship for the most part. So looking forward to breaking some of it down here. And like you said, plenty more to be had on our home pages over there this evening and throughout the week.
The guide will be up at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's a loaded PDF with plenty of different situations, charts explaining how these teams have done home and away. We'll start with home. Ralph, stats on home favorites 3.5 or higher, and then there's stats on home dogs 3.5 or higher. So let's start with a playoff overview on how home teams and favorites have done in the last few years.
Yeah, Megan, I do a comprehensive chart in the guide. But first, I just want to give you the absolute basics here on the show. And guys, don't worry about writing this down. Everything that I go over and or Jeff goes over will be in the guide. So all of this information is repeated. Quite simply, if you ask someone, how do home favorites do in the playoffs? Most people don't have an answer for you. What has history shown us? So when I went back since 2017, Megan, looking at home favorites in round one, home favorites have covered 59.4%. Round two, home favorites have covered 46.5%. So that has been a down round. Home favorites big in round one, only 46.5% in round two. Round three again, 59.5%. And in the finals, home favorites have covered 52.4%. Let me just quickly also mention the over-unders. Round one, when a team is a home favorite, 56% have gone under the total. Round two, when a team has been a home favorite, 56.7% have gone under. Round three has been an over round. When there's a home favorite, they've gone over the total 54%. And round four has gone over with a home favorite 54.5%. And Jeff's going to finish up this show talking about game sevens. If you take game seven out of that, it's going to be a significantly higher number.
Well, let's talk about teams on their first game. Jeff, how about teams on the first game of a series on a positive against the spread streak over a lengthy over streak? Now, I know, by the way, I'm just pointing this out here. It can seem very wordy and it can seem like a lot of info. This is why Ralph just mentioned it. This chart will be up. Pay attention, gather as much info as you can, but you don't have to write it down. This will be up on the guide. But Jeff, take us through against the spread streaks that have been well on the first game of a series with an over streak.
Yeah, absolutely. We look at how teams have played coming into the postseason, no question. There may be a game or two off with a little bit of rest, but this one, I'm looking at teams that are on an ATS streak of 4 games or better, and we're playing in series game one. Now, this isn't round one specific, but it is series game one specific. And for the first round, it applies to Boston, but those teams are continuing that streak at over 62%. When they come into a series game one covering at least 4 in a row, those teams are 40, 24, and 2 against the spread, going all the way back to 2004. And also, let's take a look at those over-under streaks, like my dad, kind of alluded to earlier. A team that has at least 5 straight games over the total, all the way back to 2003, which right now would apply to the Hawks and the LA Lakers. Those streaks have not continued at such a high rate, actually staying under the total in 63.2% of the games, just 21, 36, and 2 over under. And surprisingly enough, those teams are covering 60%.
That's a great stat right there, 63% on those teams with the under. Let's talk a little bit about this zigzag method. Ralph, for those that are unfamiliar with this, what is it and why has it been so profitable?
Well, that's the key, Megan. Profitable is a questionable area. It used to be profitable. Teams have adjusted now. The zigzag theory, for those that don't know, late 1900s, early 2000s, if you would play a team off a loss, you made money in the NBA playoffs. Well, what's changed? Number one, travel's changed. These guys are now in jets and police escorts, and travel's not the same as it used to be. Plus, you have situations of teams changing, having better coaching, being able to adjust. I went back and I looked at prior to 2008, if you lost the first 2 games of a series, you covered 70.2%. But if you look since 2017, if you lost back-to-back games in your game 3 of the series, you have only covered 38.1%. Now, when I look at round one without looking at games, if you blindly bet every team that lost their last game, you are 45.1%. You're losing money. But let's be a little more specific. If you bet every team that lost as a favorite, that 45% ATS record is now 56.2%. So now we are on the profitable side. So don't look at teams that lost their last game. Look at teams that lost as a favorite. And if I get a little more specific, Megan, since 2017 in round one, if your team lost as a home favorite, you are 60.5%. So zigzag as a whole has not been profitable, but when you specify teams that lost as a favorite and teams that lost as a home favorite, those are situations where the teams have bounced back and have been profitable.
And this is why we need you guys here. The zigzag method, not profitable. You do not want to just look for teams that have lost. It's the home favorite losses that are going to get you to that 60% mark. I love learning these kinds of things, Ralph and Jeff. I think it just, for anyone that's even a casual sports bettor, to doing this on a consistent base, these are the new angles that you have to look at. And as you mentioned, as time changes, travel changes, the trends are going to change as well. Jeff, let's look at a couple situations, specifically game one of a series, coming off a good or bad shooting performance. How does that affect a team against the spread?
Yeah, earlier we were talking about the streaks that they were coming off of, and kind of more of an extended performance basis and how that affects what we're doing in the playoffs and in the postseason. Now we're talking off of a 1 game performance. Teams that have shot under 40% in their previous game coming into a series game one, since 2004, they're winning under 40% of the time. They're just 23 and 38 straight up. But against the spread, those teams are actually even worse. They're covering just 35% of the games. They're just 21, 39, and 1 against the spread. And right now, it does apply to the Cavaliers, but this is not one that is round specific. Again, it is series game 1 specific, but this is going to be any round throughout the playoffs coming off a performance of under 40% shooting. But, from the other side of it, let's talk about teams that are coming off of a good performance, shooting 50% or better. This one is going to be round 1 specific. So starting the playoffs off after a 50% plus shooting performance applies to Philadelphia and Golden State right now. And those teams are covering nearly 66% in that opening game. They're 21 and 11 against the spread. Despite being a dog on average, they're actually winning those games straight up on average as well.
And we can take a peek at Philadelphia game 1 against the Brooklyn Nets. Sixers are 8.5-point favorites. All right, Ralph, before you give us one final situation, please share with us the current playoff to kickoff special that's available at Wager Talk and Sports Memo.
We did this last year, Megan, at Wager Talk and Sports Memo. It was by far one of our most popular promotions. Normally, a 90-day package is $799 or $899. Well, from now through the Hall of Fame game, August the 3rd, when the Browns play the Jets, there are 105 days. We're offering this package for $499. So you're getting the rest of April, all of May, all of June, all of July, and the first few days of August. You're getting the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, any MLB action, any UFC, soccer, or any other sports that your favorite handicapper does. Total price, $4.99. So if you like $9 Monday, imagine paying $4.50 a day for the next 100 plus days. A great special, covers you for any capper. That's valid for myself at Wager Talk, for Jeff Michaels, JM Sports at Sports Memo, or any capper at either site.
Talk about a deal. Playoff to kickoff, available at Wager Talk and Sports Memo. $4.99, $9 Monday. Get out of here. Go and take that. All right, Ralph, show us the special chart that has your favorites of 4 and higher. Can we look at that again?
You know what? When I was breaking down, there's a bunch of charts. There's like 8 charts in the guide, and there's 25 or 30 different situations that you can look at. How teams do when they're off an overtime game, how teams do if they were down by 9 or more at halftime and won the game, all type of situations like that. But there is a clear divide. Small favorites have been under the Mendoza line, while favorites of 4 or more in the playoffs, it doesn't matter what round it is, has done well. And the chart I want to share with you here are series games. So this doesn't matter. This is not round specific. Series game 1 in round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4. Take a look at the greens for the first 5 games of the series. If a team is a favorite of 4 or more, series game 1, they've covered 55%. Series game 2, 60%. Series game 3, 79%. Game 4 and 5, right around the 60% mark. But be careful, when you're down to game 6 or 7, the teams know each other very well. There's not many new things you can show a team. Those big favorites have not done well later in the series, which makes a ton of sense, covering under the Mendoza line.
Yeah, over 79% on series game 3. It's pretty nuts. When you're looking at a favorite of 4 or more. Let's talk game 7 though, Jeff, because that's when you got a lot of casual fans wanting to get in on the action. It's the big games, very competitive. Talk some data with us for game 7.
Yeah, like you said, competitive, I think, is the key word for those game 7s. And as my dad alluded to, the teams start to know each other well. It's an exciting atmosphere, but in the NBA postseason, these game sevens have really been defensive efforts. We broke it down here by round as well. Round one doesn't always have the same intensity as the later rounds. Those rounds have actually trended to the over here. Some more offense in the opening rounds when we do reach a game seven, 30 and 28 to the over, 52% over rate there. But when we look at rounds 2, 3, and 4, man, has defense really shown up. Round 2, 16 and 30 over under. That's going over under 35% of the time, staying under the total over 65%. But rounds 3 and 4 combined 2 and 20 over under. Round 3, we're looking at 2 and 12. Over 85% of the time, those games have stayed under the total. And in the 8 game sevens that we've seen in the championships, all 8 of those have stayed under the total. So looking at a lot of defense and exciting defensive outings. If you're fans of those kind of games, that's what we see a lot in game 7, and the numbers show it.
That is wild.
Megan?
0 and 8. Yes, go ahead, Ralph.
You know what? People ask me all the time, would you bet a play because of a trend? And I want to say this, I should have said it earlier. You never want to base a play on a trend. I mean, this should make a play stronger. If you're on the fence, perhaps it makes it a play. If you're on the fence and it's a negative angle, perhaps it's not a play. But I will tell you this. When we get to game 7 in the NBA, round 3 and round 4, yes, it's a combined 2 and 20 over under, but there is only one way in hell I would bet that game, and that is under. I would never bet an over in an NBA game 7, like I wouldn't bet an NHL Stanley Cup game over game 7. So that's about as close as I get to making a play based on a trend or an angle, because there's so much that put into it. But I also will say this. Jeff gave numbers from the database. I think it goes back since 2003. So yes, there have been more game 7s in the NBA finals than 8. But in the database for the last 20 some years, there have only been 8 game 7s. We've also seen the number get adjusted accordingly. So that's something you have to be careful of. Bookmakers know those same streaks as you do. So again, don't bet them blindly just because of the history, because the line makers are adjusting much more than they have in previous seasons.
But there is an exception to every rule. And if a rule does have to get broken, it sounds like it's on the over-under data for game 7, rounds 3 and 4, 2 and 20 to the under. I am absolutely going to be riding with that. Don't need to see anything else, but I know that's not always the best approach. And this is why both Ralph and Jeff are the experts here. We are so appreciative at Wager Talk TV to have these two stat minds to break down the trends and angles. We hope that you enjoyed the NBA playoffs. Please make sure you go check out both their guides. You can get it at Jeff's Sports Memo page or at wagertalk.com on Ralph's page, up at 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday. We appreciate you both here so much. Have a great rest of your day, and let's have some great action in the NBA playoffs.